Hello, visionaries. Welcome to Create Your Vibrant Life podcast, where you can create the life you desire by tapping into your inner wisdom. I'm your host, Padma Ali. I'm widely known in the field of psychology to create long-lasting transformation. And now, I'm here to help you create the life you desire using a combination of neuropsychology and ancient healing practices. This podcast is for you, evolved, overachieving leader who's ready to unlock your highest potential. I'm here to guide you through a process of self-discovery to be the creator of your destiny. And you can do all of that by just taking aligned actions, tapping into the power of your brain, your inner wisdom, and ancient practices. So stay tuned, folks. I am so delighted you are here. Hey, what's up, visionaries? Welcome to episode number 45. Do this one simple thing to crush anxiety and uncertainty. I'm so glad you're here, and I can't wait to share information in this episode about how do you deal with anxiety, especially around uncertainty, which we're all facing right now, aren't we? But before we go any further, I just wanted to say a heartfelt thank you to all the listeners around the world. We've been having massive downloads of the episodes, and I'm so grateful for that. And I'm also so grateful for the amazing, very beautiful reviews about the podcast. Denny writes, so many golden nuggets which I can apply to my daily life. Thank you so much, Denny. And Derek writes, you will say after listening to each episode, I've never thought about it this way before. And BTL 506 says that as a trained mental health professional, Padma brings a powerful, informed perspective on topics of inspiration, wisdom, and alignment. Her podcast is relatable, informative, and so helpful. Thank you for all these amazing reviews. I'm so grateful for that. So let's get on with this episode. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about because I used to be a control freak. And it's actually a standing joke in my family of how I won't watch an end of a movie. I won't watch a movie or read a book, especially if it's one of those thrillers, right? Without knowing the ending. And it better be a happy ending. This is such a sign of control if you haven't already guessed. And I've actually learned sometimes the hard way. Sometimes I ask myself this question. I ask this question to my clients too. Why are you making this so hard? Or what is causing you to make this so hard? And I've had to learn sometimes the hard way of being okay with not being in control. Because you may already know this, control is an illusion, is it not? And here's the piece about control or anything that you're facing in your life right now. There's always a lesson to be learned. And unless you learn the lesson, the universe has an amazing way of giving you circumstances, experiences that reinforce that same whatever that is that you're facing, isn't it? And it's not a punishment. I used to think it used to be a punishment. Like, why is the universe doing this to me? Like, come on, give me a break. No, it's actually a blessing. It's a blessing because sometimes it takes you to get on your hands and knees and say, okay, I surrender. I surrender to the ways of the universe. I allow. And letting things unfold before you can let something go. And that's what these experiences do for us, especially the ones that feel like, I don't know the path. It feels uncertain. And we're facing so much uncertainty around us everywhere. 2020 was such a great example of facing uncertainty, and it hasn't changed very much. Yes, there are some signs of things starting to lift up, like, whatever is happening, but it is not yet very clear. Like maybe they're, the vaccines are being produced, but there's still so many things that are still unknown. And when we face the unknown, especially for you as a visionary, right? And this might make so much sense to you. This may make it very relatable to you as a visionary. You have a vision, the path is not clear, and often the question comes up like, how am I going to get from point A to point B? And that creates more anxiety. And not only that, you have people relying on you. You have a team that's relying on you as a leader. You have family members relying on you. And you can't show your anxiety many times, can you? And here's the fact. Loneliness as a leader is real. This is a fact. This happens. Well, but it also comes down to how do you deal with the anxieties of the uncertainty that we face. And by the way, you may, if you don't know this, research shows that there are 264 million people who suffer from anxiety. And research also shows that anxiety affects cognition. It impairs your ability to think and problem solve, and causes physical symptoms and depression. Depression and anxiety are often very closely related. So is anxiety really helpful? Yeah, it is not, isn't it? But here's what it does. Anything that you're facing, it's like a cue for you. It's like saying, oh, something doesn't feel right. How can I look at this differently? What can I do with this? And that's what you're going to get in this episode. That's what you're going to discover in this episode. How do you use your current circumstances in order to evolve, in order to grow, in order to go beyond your circumstances? When I used to practice as a psychotherapist, anxiety was a common theme in my practice. And what you may or may not realize, which I saw very quickly, is that anxiety is a habit. It may not feel like a habit because it's a physical, you can feel the physical effects of anxiety, right? If you have felt anxiety in your life, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It does not feel like a habit. It feels like I have no control over what I am feeling. However, it is a habit. Control is a habit. Everything in your life, in some ways, is a habit. Something happens in your environment and it gives a cue to your brain. Your brain goes, okay, then time to fire off the neurons of anxiety. Hello, there it comes. And that's why it becomes a habit, because those neurons repeat. They reinforce. The pathways get reinforced every time you react with anxiety towards a situation. And this is why, as you may have already guessed, it's important to break the habit. And in this episode, I'm going to be sharing a few steps on how you can break this habit. And I'm going to tie the title of this episode, which is Do This One Simple Thing to Crush Anxiety of Uncertainty, into these steps. So, here's the thing. What is the first step? Think about what makes you anxious. There's often something you are wanting to achieve. It may be a goal, it may be something, it may be an event, something that you're trying to accomplish, right? And then it creates anxiety because it feels like there are no clear steps, or it feels like it's out of your control, or it feels like the answers to getting to that goal is dependent on other people, which you have no control over, right? That's often what causes the anxiety or the stress. That's the uncertainty, right? Like there's no clear path. If you had a clear path, or if you're like, you know what, I'm going to take this step and this step, then you might not feel anxious. So the first step comes down to, what are your beliefs about what you seek? What are your beliefs about the end result that you have in your mind? And you might want to write this down if you're not driving or if you're not doing anything. Sometimes I listen to podcasts, not sometimes, often. My time for listening to podcasts is when I'm in the shower or when I'm cooking or when I'm when I'm cleaning, when I'm driving. So I may not have a notebook to write these things down, but here's a trick for you. In your phone, the Note app, that's my favorite app on the entire iPhone. It's so silly, but that's where I store a lot of my thoughts. So I'll quickly make a note of a thought that comes to me, even for my clients. Like sometimes when I'm meditating, I'll have a quick thought that pops up for a download or something like that comes up for a client of mine. And then I'll put it in my notepad in the phone very quickly because my phone's always around me. Anyways, I digress. So you might want to write this down. What are your beliefs about what you seek? And often, here's what I've seen over and over again. You have a goal, but it's not clear about how to get to that goal. And that's where the anxiety comes up. So what are your beliefs about the path to get to the goal? What are your beliefs about the goal itself? When what I mean by that is, does it feel like, I can't do that? It may happen, it may not happen. Oh, it's so dependent on other people. I'm getting frustrated about this. And we all have had experiences like that, right? But the bottom line is it comes down to a belief. The belief may be, I don't think I can make this happen. I don't trust myself. I don't trust others. It may come down to a belief of the universe does not want me, will not make this happen for me. Or I don't even know if I want this. There may be a lot of different layers to this. I'm just randomly throwing things out for you to think about. But sit down and write. What are your beliefs about what you seek? Everything is a belief, even if you don't think it is. If you're not getting what you want, it's a belief. See, again, I invite you to consider this. Are you born with beliefs? No. No, we are not born with beliefs. None of us are born with beliefs. We literally come out of the womb and somebody opens our brain up, whether it's our caretakers, society, whatever it is, and they're dumping their thoughts, their view of reality on into our heads. And then we live our lives based on other people's realities. And then we form our own realities. We form our own opinions. We form our own beliefs. See, I took my son, my children for a hike in there's a local wilderness area, and we went for a hike. It was just the three of us. And there was it had a lot of rocks there, and he wanted to climb. He's 7 years old. And he tried it once. It was a kind of a slippery rock, and it was also it's very, very cold where I live, and he wasn't feeling it. So he slid down and he says, I'm not good at rock climbing. That is a belief. That's a belief. So one of our standing things between him and I is that every time he has a thought that, and then I often ask him, like, how do you feel when you say that? And I'm sharing this for a reason, because this is something you can apply to your own life. I asked him, how does it feel when he says that? And he said, doesn't feel good. So I said, okay, what else can you say instead of this? So he said, I could say I'm going to do it again and just see what happens. I said, that's great. Awesome. And then we also talk about intentions a lot. See, he's only 7, but you can start early. I start this with my daughter. She's a whole different thing. She's just turned 4, but she's really not into any of these things. So it's very different. It's a very different relationship with her. But with him, I could ask, I can talk to him about setting intentions, and he gets it. Somehow he gets it. So he said, all right, Mama, I'm going to set an intention for climbing this rock. I was like, all right, try it out. See what happens. And he did it. It took him 5, 6, 7, 8 attempts, but he scaled the rock. And in the end, even if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see like he literally like climbed as a goat, like a goat towards the last part. The last part is where he kept slipping. But he did it. But it took him many different attempts. And it also took him to shift his thought process. If he had continued to say, I can't do this, I'm not good at rock climbing, guess what would have happened? No matter how many times he attempted, it would not have happened. But this is how beliefs are formed. This is how beliefs are formed. So I invite you to look at the goal that you have, or whatever is causing you anxiety right now, whatever is causing you distress, and ask yourself this question. What are your beliefs about what you seek? See, I'm going to read you 2 quotes from Rumi. This podcast, as I was sitting and preparing for this podcast, you will start to see that in this entire podcast, there are lots and lots of quotes that just popped into my head about how I wanted to tie it all together. So here are first 2 for you. What you seek is seeking you. And everything is rigged in my favor. These are 2 quotes from Rumi. What you seek is seeking you, and everything is rigged in my favor. Did I always believe these 2 quotes that I'm reading out for you? Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. If you had seen me in my previous life, holy cow, I am nothing what you see today. Everything was a struggle. Everything was it just wouldn't, I had this, everything was hard. I made life hard. It was nobody's thing. I made it hard because of how I assumed it had to go. And I'm going to talk more about that in this episode. So I want you to listen very closely to this. I didn't always believe this. I have trained my brain to believe this instead. You see, the subconscious mind does not know, I'm going to put in quotes, reality versus air quotes, reality or your current circumstances. It does not know the difference. It only believes what you tell yourself constantly over and over again. Repetition is what it believes. You may not believe this, and you don't have to believe these things. You don't have to believe a belief in order for it to work. With repetition, somewhere the subconscious mind picks it up and says, oh, you've been saying this to me over and over again. All right, it must be true then. So, did I always believe these phrases that I just read out to you? What you seek is seeking you, and everything is rigged in my favor? No, absolutely not. And the reason I trained myself to believe this is because the alternative often leaves me frustrated and bitter. I didn't like how I felt. Like when I asked my son, how do you feel? I didn't like how I felt. I didn't like when I felt like that things were not working out in my favor, or that what I want will not happen. I just didn't like it. Now I evaluate my thoughts based on how I feel, and this is something I invite my clients to do constantly. How do you feel? How do you feel? If a thought does not make you feel good, it's time to shift it. Now, here's the tricky part. If you say if my son said he truly believed he couldn't climb that rock. I knew he could because it was a pretty small rock. It was not a big deal. I knew he could do it. But say he didn't believe it. And then at that point you're saying, oh no, I can do this. This is going to be possible. It can happen. The subconscious brain or the subconscious mind is going to reject it because there is no real, again, air quotes, evidence of that. So in those moments, if you feel like you don't believe what you're saying, the alternate thought, you don't believe it, I'm going to share with you a very powerful word. This word will shift everything for you. That word is allow. Allow. Because allowing means there is no resistance If there's resistance, if there's polarization in your thoughts, in your feelings, in your beliefs, it is not going to work. So when you use the word allow, I allow this experience. I allow things to unfold. I allow myself to experience trying to rock climb right now and see what happens. I allow. Allowing means no resistance, which then opens up a different path. And so I invite you to see this very closely. And if the alternate thought doesn't make sense, use the word allow instead. And that will help you shift this belief, shift the story, shift whatever it is. Even if you think it's not a story, it's not a belief, try that and see what happens. I generally don't like to use the word try again, because try implies that you're going to give it a half-assed attempt. Sometimes I'm conscious about the language I use, because sometimes you might be listening to it with your children. So anyways, that just slipped out, and I'm not going to edit it out. All right. So use the word allow, and then see what happens. Uncovering beliefs that are holding you back and clearing it from its roots is one of the main ways I get my clients to shift, and which is how I've created shifts in my life. And it's a process. It's a process I take my clients through, and it's a process that works because we are extraordinarily powerful. You may or may not realize that as human beings, we are extraordinarily powerful. We have a faculty that other beings on this planet don't, which is access to the superconscious mind, which is accessing universal consciousness, which is where all the answers lie. And if something in your life feels hard, it's because somewhere you're making it to be hard. And when I was given this feedback years ago, I didn't like it. I didn't like it when someone said, you are making it hard on yourself. And I'll share with you the story when I was sick in the next phase of this podcast episode. I didn't like it. I didn't like to hear that I was making my life hard. But that was the truth. We make our lives hard. We can choose it to be easy, or you can choose it to be hard. And whatever you choose, the universe is going to reflect that as circumstances in your life. Hard truths to follow, to swallow, but sit with it. And especially if I'm triggering you, which is one of my specialities, I trigger people, which is what causes change, right? When you trigger somebody, or when you feel triggered, it's an opportunity to go, oh, what button in me is getting pushed? All right, let's move on to the second step. And here's where I'm going to dive into that one thing that you can use to crush anxiety of uncertainty, but not yet. Not yet. Before that, I'm going to talk about emotions. What are emotions? And I'm going to tie it all together. Why am I talking about emotions? Emotion is nothing but energy in motion, right? See, for many people, anxiety, which is an emotion, in the face of uncertainty comes up because of fear. There's fear of the unknown. And what do we as human beings do when we're facing anything unpleasant? When we don't want to feel something, what do? We resist. We want it to stop. We want to change things, right? And we resist. That resistance is what often keeps us stuck. See, emotions won't kill you, but we think it will because of how uncomfortable it makes us feel. You know, when I was sick years ago, and you've heard me talk about this before in other episodes, when I was sick, There was a lot of unknown because there was no end in sight. There was no clear path of how I was going to get better. I had tried so many things back then, but there was no clear solution. And that uncertainty made me very, very anxious, depressed, angry, and all the things that I'm sharing with you that I help people discover. I used to do those things. And that was so uncomfortable, so uncomfortable. I didn't want to feel it. So I would fight it. I would resist it. I would get angry. I would get frustrated. I would be bitter at the world, and I would be bitter at myself for not being able to do this. And the reason, and here's the fact, well, I don't want to use the word fact because there's no fact. It's all interpretations in life. Everything is interpretations, which I'm going to talk about in another episode. It's all interpretations. My interpretation of life was, it sucks. In one simple sentence, it sucks. And I couldn't see the end. I couldn't see the light. And again, you don't have to be sick to relate to what I'm saying. You can apply this to any circumstance in your life. You may not be dealing with illness, but you could be dealing with a problem that you're facing at work. You could be dealing with a relationship that you're struggling with. It can be applied to anything. See, here's how I worked. Here's why I'm not sick anymore. And I will never be that kind of sick anymore because I no longer identify with being sick. That was number one. That was the first thing I had to learn, to no more identification with being sick. And identity is something I'm going to be talking about in other episodes. They're all very much connected. Identity and beliefs are very connected. And the more we identify with something, the more it keeps us stuck. Anyways, I'm digressing. Let's come back to this. So the bottom line is, when you feel uncomfortable, everything in you wants to push it out. But that piece does not work. What works is allowing. At some point, I was so tired of fighting myself and keeping myself stuck. I didn't know those things back then. And I give myself total grace for that. But we keep ourselves stuck. I made it hard for myself. And this is my learning in this lifetime. And I'm going to keep learning this over and over again till I fully get it, till I stop resisting. Anytime I deal with something that feels that doesn't have a clear solution, I do the same things I was doing, which is keep fighting it, right? And then at some point, it's like I'm forced to my hands and knees and say, okay, I surrender. I let the universe guide me. I allow the universe to guide me. I allow the universe to show me the next steps. And you may have heard this in another episode where I'm lying in bed. This was years and years ago. And really, it was like so devastated that this was my life, right? I was very young and no end in sight with this illness. And I didn't know what to do. And I'm lying on my bed saying, okay, I'm bedridden. If this is what the universe has plans for me for the rest of my life, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. And yes, it brought a lot of tears. And I was like, all right, fine. If this is what you want for me, I'm okay with it. And that was the turning point. That was the turning point. And I would be lying if I said, okay, after that, immediately everything changed and I got better. No, it still took some time. But that was the turning point. I no longer resisted what was happening. I allowed life to unfold. And this is vital. This is why I'm sharing this, because you can apply this to anything in your life. As a leader, with your team, with your family members, anywhere you're having a hard time with your friends, wherever you're having a hard time, see if you can apply this. How can you apply this? And this is the part where a lot of people have a hard time with. And you may or may not even like the answer I've given you, which is to accept. The first step is acceptance, is to be okay with uncertainty. is to be okay with not knowing. So what happens when we accept something? I gave you the clue that I used in the first step. Allow. Allow. Allowing is what happens when you start accepting, and it opens up. And this is why I brought in emotions again. See, emotions have vibration. Emotions have a frequency to it. And we are all energy. We're nothing but energy. And this is how we create. And if your vibration and your frequency is not in harmony with what you want to create, will you be able to create that? Ask yourself that. Will you be able to create it? Probably not. And this is why managing your emotions, working with your emotions, and starting with accepting your emotions and then allowing the next steps to unfold is the first place to begin. And this is the piece I'm inviting you to sit with. This is the piece I'm inviting you to sit with. We're still not to that one thing that I said. That's the title of this episode. We're still not there. I'm building it up, and there's a reason I'm building this up, because I can't spring that on you right now until I go through this whole thing. Now, if you find yourself asking how, the how question, how do I allow? How do I do this? How do I accept it? If you ask the how question, I'm going to invite you to sit with it, because the quality of your answers will depend on the quality of the questions you ask. It's the famous quote by Richard Bandler, the founder of NLP. If you keep asking, why, how am I going to do this? How? Will you get the answers you're looking for? Will you? Probably not. And if you keep asking, why am I anxious about this? How do I get over this? What do I do? How can this change? What will happen? What do you think will happen when you do that? Here's what will happen. It creates resistance. And when it creates resistance, what you resist will persist. What you resist will persist. You may have already heard this phrase, what you resist will persist, and it will. Till you learn the lessons you need to learn, it will persist. So my invitation, my dear visionaries, my invitation to you is to be in peace. And to be in peace, we need to accept, we need to allow. And that's when everything starts to shift, doesn't it? So what happens when you're not in peace? What happens? Consider that for a moment. Right? I'm going back to my illness. When I was not in peace, it was so much, everything became so hard. I made life hard. When I say I made life hard, that's exactly true. I made life hard. We make life hard when we resist, when we're not in peace. So instead, ask yourself questions. Ask yourself, first of all, what other questions can I ask? What else do I need to see that I'm not seeing? Where are my blind spots? Right? What kind of questions can I ask? What are my blind spots? What are my blind spots? And what else can come in through this? Another quote that will answer that question. No problem can be solved by the same mind that created it. You've heard this quote before from Einstein. No problem can be solved by the same mind that created it. So the same mind that is going, what's going on, and wherever you're feeling stuck, it's not going to be the place that will find you the answer. You have to think outside the box. And sometimes outside the box actually is really outside the box. To find the answer, you have to step outside the box. And how to step outside the box on its own might also be a question to ask. And here's where being okay with not knowing, the quality of the answers will depend on the quality of the questions you ask. And sometimes I don't have answers when I ask these questions. I just sit with them. And at some point, I trust that the answers will be revealed. And this is why this is important. Wherever your attention is, it will expand. If your attention is on why is this not working out? Why am I stuck? Why is this happening? Why? Or what can I do? Or how can this be resolved? Right? If your attention is on that is what is going to expand versus the problems are going to expand versus actually the solution. And this is where it's really important to see, where is your attention? This is a question I ask myself all the time. Where's my attention? Where's my attention? Is my attention on lack? Is my attention on what's not working? Is my attention on why am I dealing with this? Or is my attention on possibilities? See, you may or may not know this about my life, that I had another business between my psychotherapy practice before I ended it and starting this business, this coaching business. I had another business that I started. It did not work out, but I was blind. There was a blind spot there. And the blind spot was, where was my attention? A lot of what I'm sharing with you, I've been through that. My attention was I didn't know the answers, but my attention in that entire business was on, this is not working. This is not working. Why is this not working? Why can't I find the answers? Why are the right people not showing up? What is this? It was a business that really needed other people's help in order to work, to make it a success. And other people were not working the way I wanted them to work. So my attention was constantly on frustration and not making this work, and why is this not working? And that was a big blind spot for me. And when I finally, and also the business was not in alignment, which I realized later, but I didn't realize it. I could have realized all of those things sooner than later, but it came. Everything is in divine order, right? It revealed itself in the right time to me that this business was not in alignment and I needed to stop it. But it took some time for that. And that is why that's all the things I'm sharing with you is not only from my own experience, but this is something I've worked with so many people around similar issues. Right? So I'm really inviting you to consider these things. What are your blind spots? Where's your attention? What kind of questions can you ask yourself? And now we are ready to talk about the one thing that will help you crush anxiety about uncertainty, especially about uncertainty. I'm going to tie everything together that we talked about. And then we'll talk about that one thing, because so let me just go into it. Allowing the feelings, allowing is the first steps. Accepting and allowing are the first steps. And then I'm inviting you to get curious about the beliefs that may or may not be present, that are not helping you get towards your goal. Asking better questions. Where's your attention? And all of these things will come together in that one thing. Are you ready for it? When I say it, you're going to be like, of course I knew this. It's in silence. It's in quietening the mind, the brain. Quietening the brain. It's about being still. And I'm going to invite you to do this with me right now. Think about the biggest problem you're facing. Whatever that is. Wherever you feel the most anxious. And drop inside your body. Drop inside your body to notice where you're facing, where you're feeling this experience. And bring awareness to whatever you're feeling in your body. Meaning just place your attention with no agenda. You're not here to shift it. You're not here to move it. You're not here to do anything with it. You're just being with it and just breathing. Just you can place your hand there if you want and just breathing. Just following the sounds of my voice and just breathing, just being, not changing, just allowing it. And knowing and trusting that the answers will come. And when you do this, you can also just repeat, if this phrase is in resonance with you, if it resonates for you, this is one of the phrases I use a lot for my own life, that everything will be okay. Everything is okay. I am well. You are well, all is well. Everything is okay. Everything is exactly how it needs to be. See, I didn't go very deep into the process, but you can feel how the energy shifts, can't you? It's like this, like everything just feels peaceful, doesn't it? And this is a good place to start. Because when you quiet the brain, you can hear the mind. You can hear the universal consciousness giving you the answers. The answers are always there. You just have to allow it to come to you. When my brain was in chatter mode, when I was very sick, and it was like nothing's working, all those negative thoughts, beliefs, everything, I couldn't hear. I couldn't hear the solutions presented to me. And it took that active act of surrender before I could allow the solutions to present. And like I said, it was not a miraculous cure, but steps opened up, opportunities came up, other avenues, other doors opened up, which allowed me to walk into that door and find solutions. And at this point, I'm as healthy as I ever have felt in my entire life. It's an understatement. This is the best I've ever felt in my life. And it's taken all of this work to get there. But it starts with all the things I've shared with you so far in this episode. I invite you to sit in silence, in quietening the brain, and releasing what is no longer serving you. And when you sit in silence, this is often an exercise I do with my own self. I ask certain specific questions, and then I sit in silence. I ask questions like, what is it that I need to see? Show me my blind spot. Or what needs to be released right now? Or just even setting the intention, release whatever is no longer serving me. See, we all know, I want you to think about somebody in your life that just talks and talks and talks and talks and talks and talks and talks. How well do you think they listen? Not much, right? And that's the same with the brain. When there's so much chatter in the brain, it's very hard to listen. It's very hard to listen to what else might be there. The answers are always there, and you will get them when the brain is quiet and you can listen to the universal consciousness. All right, so we are towards the end of our time together. And I'm going to leave you with another quote. I told you this whole podcast episode, there were like so many quotes coming to me that were supporting everything that I'm sharing with you. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. It's a Lao Tzu quote. When I let go of what I am, I become what I might be. It's a beautiful one. These quotes, the ones that I read to you, are actually on my wall, framed behind on my wall in my office room, because I need reminders as much as you guys do. This is constant practice. And I'm inviting you to share your takeaways and your breakthroughs with me on social media, on Instagram specifically. That's where you'll find me, on Instagram or LinkedIn. And I'm also, if it feels right to you, I invite you to leave a review for me. And for this podcast, not just for me, it's for this podcast. I've come to this stage in my life where I really don't care how someone thinks of me or what they feel of me. Really doesn't matter. This is not for me. And I can say this with complete transparency and honesty. This is not for me. I have a desire, and I know you do too, as a visionary, to reach many people, to uplift the vibration of this planet. And by leaving a review, it allows other people to get hold of this content. And I'm sure you found value in this content, so I'm inviting you to leave a review and share it with your friends and family. Just imagine what it would be like if we all lived in the state of peace. And yes, that's why I'm a visionary, because you can't see that right now on the planet, but I have this vision of everyone living in peace. And as a visionary, what's that famous Steve Jobs quote? Something about, visionaries or something about being, I'm totally blanking out, and you know what quote I'm talking about, don't you? So anyways, I so appreciate you listening and being a part of this journey, and thank you so much. So much love and so much gratitude to each of you. Take care. Thank you so much for listening. I have a request for you. If you found value, chances are that your friends and family will too. So if you can leave a positive review on iTunes, it will help reach so many more people. And if you have any topics or questions you would like me to feature, please send them to support@padmaali.com. And lastly, please share your takeaways and breakthroughs with me on Instagram @Padma Ali. Thank you so much for tuning in.